Hello everybody, welcome to this afternoon's Speakers for Schools virtual talk. We're delighted so many students from across our school network have been able to join us. This session will last for around 45 minutes and will include a presentation from our speaker before moving to student submitted questions. Questions for our speaker can be submitted via the Q&A function on the right hand side of your screen, and this will be open towards the end of the presentation. Unfortunately, we will not be able to answer all submitted questions. We have several hundred questions submitted in every talk we organise, and there is simply not enough time to answer them all. I'm delighted to welcome this afternoon's speaker, Dr. Janvi Patel. Janvi is an entrepreneur, board advisor and ambassador for equality, and has kindly joined us today from LA to explore with students her career journey from GCSEs to present day. Janvi, hi, welcome to your first virtual talk. How are you today?
I'm good, and your cat has joined us. That's awesome. That is fantastic. Well, it's a pleasure to be here today. So thank you, everyone. I know I can't see you, but it is lovely to be here with you. And thank you for taking time in your day to come share this moment. I thought I would just kick off by just saying, when I attend events, I usually Google the person I am listening to. And I don't know if any of you did that this morning, but if you did Google me, this is what you would see. So on the top right left hand side, you'll see that I've got 3 children. Those are my 3 children. They're a bit older than they look in that picture, but they're 11. I've got twins who are 9, and my husband. And as Carly's already said, I live in Los Angeles, so it's actually pretty early. The caffeine is still starting to wind its way through. So I have a pretty young family. In the middle, that's my business partner, Denise Nurse. So we founded a business, which I'll talk about in a bit. But that's me as a female founder. And there are a number of pictures of me just in various speaking slots. One with Sherry Blair, one The Economist, Red Magazine, Women in the City. I do a number of speaking slots, both for industry and for women networks and diversity networks. In the bottom left-hand corner, I received a doctorate. I was incredibly honoured to receive a doctorate from my university last year actually now. And it was for the work that I've done for diversity within the profession and generally. And so that's what you would see, but as many of you will know, social media and what you see on the internet and images is not really the true journey or necessarily reality. And so I thought I would just kick off by saying, this is not where I thought I would land. And so when I was young or younger, let me see if my slide will kick in. There we go. This is me. This is me when I was about 7 years old, I think. I was incredibly nerdy. I was a pretty loud kid, but equally I was very insecure. I went to a school in North London. I was raised in North London. My parents are Indian. I'm first generation immigrant. My parents are from Uganda and India. We were a very traditional Indian household. We spoke Gujarati in the house. That was our first language. My parents worked all the time, actually. And so I was raised predominantly by my grandmother, who lived with us, and she could not read or write English. So it was a very traditional Indian household, especially in North London. I went to Palmer's Green High School, and around 11 years old, I took the 11+ exam and applied to a bunch of schools. Got rejected from most of them, but happily I was accepted into a school called the Mount, which is up in Mill Hill, and I loved it. I absolutely loved the school. I loved the sports, and I had a great time. Just in terms of socially and in terms of the curriculum, I had a great time. But I wasn't very good at the academics. And part of that is I didn't study very much. Without having much parental guidance on it, I was left to do what I wanted to do, and I enjoyed playing sports and hanging out with my brother and messing around, and my grandmother wouldn't be able to read or write or help me in any event. So I did mess around quite a bit. And so I found some reports from my teachers at that time when I was about 14 years old. And this is pretty much what they said. They said I needed to do a lot of studying to obtain the grades that I needed to, that I needed to face my difficulties if I wanted to achieve my ambitions. And I'm not sure what my ambitions were at that time. I don't recall knowing what I wanted to do, but I'm pretty sure I had some quite lofty ambitions, and my teachers could see that unless I started to study, I wasn't going to make the grades that I needed to make. And they weren't wrong. So this was my GCSE exam results. That's 1989, as you can see. I got a couple of A's, some B's, I got a C. I was only allowed to take 8 GCSEs because my teachers didn't think I would be able to cope with any more. Many took 9, 10, 11. I took the lowest amount, which was 8. And then, as you can see, I got a D in English, and I was pretty gutted. English is my first language, or was one of, I'm fluent in English. Why couldn't I get pass a grade in English? But it suddenly occurred to me that actually I didn't really work at English. I didn't read. In fact, I don't even recall having any books at home to read. I never went to the library, and so I realised it's a subject you have to work on, as you have to do for every other subject. And so what I decided to do was actually just start working on it. And so I spent a fair amount of time reading, really paying attention to my written skills. I did a lot of speech and drama courses so I could express myself better. I retook my exam and I got a B. And so my GCSEs were now done. I had thought I would get more A's than I did. I didn't. And even for my school, this was a pretty, average to low pass grade school. But in any event, I was done and I was on to my A levels. And what I needed to do to get into the university I wanted to, which was Manchester, and I wanted to study law and accountancy, I needed 3 B's. And then this is what I got. I got 2 B's and a C. And I have to say I did work hard at this point. So I got 2 B's and a C and I was short. But luckily, after a few phone calls to Manchester University, literally begging them to take me, they did take me and say that I could go do law and accountancy at Manchester. And thinking back, I'm not, many people, especially my generation, will say, oh, I used to watch LA Law, which is kind of my generation's version of Suits, and say, oh, I really wanted to do law, or I really loved a specific argument or a specific, show or person in law. And I don't recall having that thought process. I just thought it would be a really good base education for my education. I thought it would give me a lot of credibility. I didn't want to go into finance, which is where everyone in my family was going. And also I had failed English. And so people kept on telling me, if you're really bad at English, you should stay away from law. And I had started realizing English is a subject you just need to study for and you need to work at. And if I continue to do that, then this would not be an issue. So I went and did law and accountancy in Manchester. And one of the reasons, now thinking back about why I chose Manchester, is my headmistress at that time said to me, go far enough so that your parents can't drop in. And coming from a very traditional Indian background, that was really quite important, but close enough that you could come home and do laundry. So Manchester seemed the perfect place for me because I had the best of both worlds in that case. But also in the 90s, Manchester was their most happening place. And if you get a moment, watch the movie called Class of '92, which has David Beckham in it, and I think he might have done it. And it really shows you how happening Manchester was in the 90s. And it was just a blast to be there. So I loved it. And that's where I graduated from in '95. So my course was a 4-year course. So I did law and accountancy together, which took 4 years to do. So after that, I went to the University of Law and did my legal practice course there to start the process of becoming a lawyer. And I was told that if you got a 2-1 at university, getting a job in a law firm would be straightforward because that's kind of what most law firms want. If you come from a good university with a 2-1, you'll be set. So I thought, that's great, got a 2-1 university, that was great. Went off to the University of Law, got my my accreditation that I needed from there, and I thought the rest of it was going to be pretty smooth sailing. But that was definitely not the case. I applied to over 70 companies, and I don't know if you've started to do application forms, but these forms are just insane. They are some 5-6 pages long of really detailed questions, each one very different. Some of them have psychometric testing. So I did over 70 of them, took the whole summer and then some time to kind of literally just plow through these application process. And I literally got 2 interviews, and out of that I got 1 job. And that was the job I took. I was at Charles Russell, which is up there. In 1998, I started at Charles Russell. And I have to say, you know, there is a little bit of the universe finds a way. Charles Russell was the perfect place for me. I loved it there. I loved the team, I loved the organisation. And so being at Charles Russell for 7 years was actually a real pleasure to be there. I did my training contract there, and if any of you know how training, I don't know if any of you know training contracts work, but we do 2 years to train as a lawyer within a law firm usually. And over those 2 years you move around different departments. So I did commercial property, and for that we did a lot of work on the development of Eton School's land. Eton School owns a lot of land around Windsor, and so we did a lot of development there. So I worked on that project. We also, it was a time when mobile phones were becoming big, and many of you will be thinking, oh my gosh, that must be decades ago, and actually it was decades ago. When I started working, we didn't have mobile phones. So one of the projects I worked on was selling and buying airwaves in Eastern Europe, which was really interesting. But the area that I really loved was employment law, and that was a lot to do with discrimination, redundancies, moving people around, not just from different organisations, but different countries. And I loved that area. I also loved the team, the employment law team at Charles Russell. So after the end of my 2 years of moving around in the different departments, I decided I was going to stay within the employment team at Charles Russell, and I stayed there until 2005. And the reason I left was a few reasons. One of them was my next step would have been to go for partnership with the law firm. And it was a very traditional law firm, and I didn't quite feel like I fitted in. There was next to no diversity within the leadership ranks. There is more now, but at that time there was next to none. So there were very few women. There were very few women from minorities. In fact, I think there was 1, and I think overall minorities, there were just 2 people from minority backgrounds in the leadership. And I just thought, this is going to be an uphill battle and not where I wanted to be. Plus, I wanted to get closer to business. I thought running a business is what I wanted to do. So I got a job at a company called Nortel Networks, which no longer exists. It actually went bust a few years ago. But I worked, so what they did is telecoms infrastructure. And so I worked there for about a year. But I have to say, when I started, I very quickly realized that this was not the place for me. And a few kind of real kind of trigger points was, it would take me about an hour and a half each way to commute to work. And then on top of it, I was working literally the clock, because I was working with teams in America, UK, and in Asia. So if you work that whole time zone and then you have a 2-3 hour commute every day, that's exhausting. So I realized that wasn't quite where I wanted to be. And then also I thought, I really wanted to start a business. I'd come from a family of entrepreneurs, and I wanted to do something different. And I also got tired of just having one client to work on. At Charles Russell, I had a huge variety of work. We worked for publishing houses like Elle Magazine and Cosmo, Hello Magazine, and then I also worked for embassies. And when I was at Nortel, I just did telecoms infrastructure, and that became a bit dry for me pretty quickly. So anyway, decided it was time to move on. I have to say, I loved that place too. Nortel was great, and the team there were lovely to work with, but it was time to move on. So I then decided I was going to start my own firm. And with that thought process, with the experience that I'd had at Charles Russell and at Nortel, I realized that the choices within law were really limited, both in terms of a client, but also in terms of a lawyer as well, and in terms of where you wanted to go for your career. So what I decided was to set up a law firm that actually gave you options as a client and gave you options as a lawyer in how you wanted to run your life and your practice. So Hailbury is what we called it. I will say I think it was a really smart model, even though obviously I say so myself. And it was a really different approach to the legal profession. And it gave senior lawyers a really interesting and different career track. And it gave clients an access to lawyers that they would not normally have. Overall, one of the things we are well known for within Hailbury is we found a better way of working for senior women and for working families. And one of the things I always found insane was that around 60% of law students are women. And then when you go up through the leadership ranks of law firms, there's only less than 20% of partners in law firms are women. And so there is a massive fallout of women and working families, because and a large part of that is the structure and the way that the infrastructure of law firms work. And so we wanted to address that as an issue, and we were successful in doing that. But what I will say was really interesting, and I didn't quite anticipate, is that we were the two in the legal industry. We were the only two female founders who were from a minority background in this space when we started up. And I didn't quite appreciate the challenges that would raise. So when you start up a business, the basics that you need some customers, you need people who are able to do the work, so your team, and you need money to fund the business. All three of those were a massive challenge for us. So if I start off with just customers and access to them, we had no access to customers. We didn't have a customer base to start with. And what we were trying to attack was get access to some of the biggest companies within the UK. And for example, some of the biggest telecoms companies, some of the biggest banks. And we thought we had the smartest model on the ground, and we could not get a phone call or a meeting with any of the buyers of the service. So therefore we didn't have any work. And then if you don't have any work, no lawyers are going to join you because they want work and they need income. And so we couldn't get lawyers. And on top of it, we couldn't get any banks to fund us. So what we started to realize was this was a really closed market. It was made for predominantly the old boys network, from certain schools, from certain backgrounds, who all kind of knew each other, and it was a closed shop, and there was no way of infiltrating it from that kind of traditional way. And what we ended up doing is we really tried to find new ways to get our message out to the market. And one of the ways that really helped us was through social media. Bearing in mind this was about 13 years ago, social media was not so big within the professional setup. So some people were on LinkedIn, a large number weren't. Most companies didn't really use LinkedIn or Twitter at that time. And so we were really able to kind of go out there and start using social media, getting direct access to our customers and then to the lawyers that we needed to do the work. And through that, we were able to build up our network and build up the business. To the very end, we didn't receive funding from the banks. They always refused to provide us with anything. But at some point, we became able just to run it with the customers and the lawyers that we had. And then we got to a point where, when you get to a certain size, you have to think, what do you want to do? And what we want to do was carry on growing, but we didn't have, again, if you don't have access to the funds to keep growing from the banks, what do you do? So we decided it was time for us to sell so that we could scale up. And so 12 years into our journey of starting the business, we felt that we had taken it as far as we could with just the two of us without any external funds. We were a multi-million-pound business. We had an incredible client base from Expedia to pretty much every telecoms provider you can think of in the UK, to a number of large banks. And so we thought, this was the right time for us to exit out of the business and move into a bigger entity. So with that, in 2019, we got acquired by a company called Elevate, which is a global law company. It provides a number of services to in-house teams and to actually law firms as well. And when we joined them, 2019, so last year, we then took a massive undertaking of dealing with all the integration of putting ourselves into the business, but also we expanded globally. So we then launched into America, Australia, Singapore, and Hong Kong. And so once again, I was working the 24-hour clock, but it was a really successful acquisition and integration and expansion. And having done that for about, for about 12 months, we started to think, you know, we're in a good spot, the organization's in a good spot. It's time to pass on the baton to someone else and to start the next chapter of our journeys. And Denise and I both then resigned from Elevate earlier this year, and about 2-3 weeks ago, actually the 10th of April, so I've lost track of time, we actually exited Elevate and Hailbury, and it's just in time to do the homeschooling and to take care of family, which I know many of you will be doing at home. So that's kind of my career journey. It's been quite a ride from being, starting at Charles Russell to Nortel to Hailbury to Elevate. It has been incredibly interesting and challenging at different points, not least because as part of during the time we were running the business, I moved to LA and then worked remotely. So, now everyone's working remotely because of COVID, but actually 13 years ago, that was quite interesting to do, and to do it in a different time zone. So waking up early at 4 o'clock became the norm in my household, and I would work through the morning and the afternoon to try and get as much done for the London time zone. So it's, and I also had 3 children. My business partner had 3 children, so we were working mums as well, and that's that has challenges as well. But it's been quite a ride. In terms of just the legal profession, I think one of the most amazing things that I've seen over the last 13 years is how many options law students now have and lawyers now have. So as I said at the beginning, when I started my career, I really had to go get a training contract from a law firm, and that's where we all went. And the law firms essentially held the keys to whether you could actually qualify as a lawyer or not. Now there are many options. So AccuTrainee is a new organisation that has just set up, and they can help you become a trainee by placing you at different organisations, so you don't always have to just be at one place. Aspiring Solicitors is a fantastic organisation that assists you to become a trainee, to try and get you trainee or actually other jobs within the legal profession as well, but they're a really great organisation, networking group. FLEX works a lot with paralegals and places them into really brilliant organisations. But then there are the organisations themselves, so like BBC, British Airways, and a number of others have started their own training platforms as well. So the options that we did not have 13 years ago are starting to really multiply. And in terms of just working in law, it doesn't just have to be a lawyer. There are legal operations roles, there are technology roles, there's so many different jobs that there are available for lawyers within law that are not just specifically legal. So it's been really incredible to see. One thing I thought I would touch on, which is very dear to my heart, is when we think about law, we think about lawyers, and you think about, I'm going to go see a lawyer because I need to buy a property, or I need to buy, I need to deal with a divorce, or someone passed away and I need to deal with their probate. But actually, laws have really shaped our society and make us who we are. And I thought I'd pull out a few facts. One that I find fascinating is in 1919, the Sex Discrimination Removal Act meant that women could finally enter the profession. So it's been about a year since women have been allowed to be in the legal profession, which I find incredibly interesting, because without that piece of legislation, I would not be here today. And law has changed, has continued to evolve. So in 1975, that was after I was born, women could open bank accounts in their own name. Women, they started to get protection on the grounds of sex or marriage, started getting equal pay. And I don't know if you guys have seen the news recently on the BBC, or earlier this year, late last year on the BBC, about the presenters, the women presenters who were getting paid a lot less than their colleagues and their peers, the male presenters. That whole, all that information came out as a result of the Equality Act. And if it wasn't for that piece of legislation, we would not know that men and women were getting paid at different rates. So one thing that I find fascinating is that laws really define our society. And there's a reason why, you know, women's rights are better in the UK than they are in other parts of the world. And so as much as we think about law as in, you know, have I done my contract? What am I signing up to? Actually, it's a much bigger tool than just the specific piece of work that you are doing. It really makes us who we are. And it's something that I feel very strong and passionate about, that we need to continue to evolve our laws so that the world becomes a more equal place. And so, and it's not just for women, this is a slide about men, about fathers, and how there have been an increase in rights for fathers and for working fathers as well. So we often talk about rights for women, but actually it's for minorities, it's for fathers, it's for underprivileged, it's for you know, children who've got special educational needs, it's for our society as a whole. So there's a couple of organisations that I work with. One of them is called Equality Now, which is a fantastic organisation that tries to change equality around the world. So they were responsible for changing or for abolishing honour killings within Pakistan. And they do a lot on violence. They're running the global campaign for FGM, and that's what they try and do. They try and change the laws, and some of them are incremental changes. It's not, you know, ripping up whole pieces of legislation. Some of them are just the smaller changes, but they also try and provide access to the law, because it's one thing saying, you know, you're not allowed to do something, but if the person who's the victim doesn't have access to that piece of law, or the judicial system that allows them to, you know, use that piece of law, then what's the point of it? So that's what Equality Now does, and it's been fantastic being involved with them and seeing the changes actually coming into practice. Free Periods is an organisation I got involved with a couple of years ago. It was founded by an amazing girl called Amika George, and a couple of years ago got in contact with her to say, I think having done the demonstration and the campaigns and the you know, all kind of online protests and all the rest of it, I think it's time to take this challenge into the courts and try and do a legal challenge. So we kind of got together, decided what we were going to do with that, and then we launched, started to launch a legal challenge against the government in the England government in the UK to provide products to all schools. And actually, earlier this year we were successful, and the government has now offered free sanitary products to all schools in England. So if your school has not signed up, please get them to sign up. The information is actually on the Free Periods website, but these products are now available, and that is really important, because we had learned that 1 in 10 girls were missing school because they couldn't afford sanitary products. And I think part of my thought process was, I actually want sanitary products in every bathroom. It's the same as going to, you know, having toilet paper in a bathroom. And one report that I read very early on in my thought process was, all bathrooms are not created equal. When men go to a bathroom, they get whatever they need in a bathroom, and when women go to a bathroom, they do not. And so, and it's really interesting when you kind of dive through the law, when you look at health and safety regulations, you realise that they were written at a time when it was just men in the room, because no one thought about providing the products. If it was written now, someone would have thought about it, because there would have been some women in the room to say, I need this. And so it's really important that we start to kind of go, why don't we have this? It's good to question, so why is that not feasible? And then see what we can do, how we can use the law to change that, which is what we did. Like, why don't we have products in schools? Like, let's use the law to see how we can get products into schools. So that was a really great campaign. We are looking to see how we can extend it around the rest of the UK. I know Scotland's got a great campaign going as well. And so we're looking to see how we can expand it around the UK, but also into Europe. Obviously, COVID, we've kind of taken a bit of break from some of that, but it's been great to see that. And I thought I would end with 2 quotes that I particularly love. The first one is, "You miss 100% of shots you don't take." And I think this really defines a large part of my journey. I wasn't the smartest kid by far, but I had a huge amount of grit, and I just kept on going. Though it didn't matter that I failed my English exam, I just retook it, and that wasn't the only exam I failed. I failed many, and some of them I worked at and still failed. So it's not that I wasn't trying the whole time, but I kept going and I kept pushing forward. And I just think it's really important to know that if you just keep trying, you will get there in the end. This journey is not linear. It's not going to be literally a tick box exercise. You've got to find your own path, and you've got to keep moving forward. And the other phrase that I see is, "Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard." I actually saw this in my one of my kids' schools, and I just thought that is fantastic, because again, I wasn't the smartest kid. And most of my colleagues went to better schools, got better grades, went to better universities, and have read 100 million books more than me, and all the rest of it, right? But it doesn't matter. I work hard. I woke up every day at 4 o'clock for 12 years, and I did not miss a day. And I just kept being relentless at it. And I think it's really important to know whether, if you get an A grade, fantastic. Your doors, they will open up much more easily. But if you don't, or if you fail, it's not the end of the road. It just means you just have to work harder, and you have to prove yourself in a different way. And you just keep on you have to just keep working hard. So yeah, I think, there are 2 quotes that I would leave you with. It's these 2: try your best, and just try and keep working at it.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that presentation. It was absolutely wonderful. And we've had so many questions submitted from students, which is really fantastic. So I'm going to go through a few of those now, if that's okay, for the next 10 minutes or so. Fantastic. So one popular question that has been submitted quite a few different times is, was there ever anyone or anything that really inspired you in your career?
Oh, wow. I have to say, I wouldn't say there's one person that's inspired me. I get inspiration from a number of places. I think, I have to say I'm on a constant hunt for more inspiration. But it's usually just something, I see something quite basic and I go, oh my God, that has really resonated with me. So, just my mum has been just amazing, just her quiet resilience of being a working mum, raising us, making full-on Indian meals every day. I still haven't been able to do that. So, just knowing that, I've got someone like her who I look at and just go, how did you do it? And I still am inspired by that. But honestly, I just get inspired by, Amika George. Just she wakes up and she just thought of something and she put some action into it. And so I don't think it's, it doesn't have to be Oprah Winfrey, who I saw her speak recently, and she was just incredible. But I just hear different parts of inspiration everywhere. And I have to say, I now seek it out. So I listen to podcasts that I think are inspiring. I hear people's stories. And one thing I will say is, only recently have I realized that I don't like fiction and that I love reading stories and history, which I find really fascinating. And I think a large part of that is because I find it inspiring. And I like to hear other people's journeys and what they went through. And I take a bit from each one of them as I go through it. So yeah, I don't know if that's quite the answer. There's not one person I would say, but I do seek out to find that spark that gets me going for the next step.
Fantastic. And you spoke about your mum's kind of quiet resilience. Do you think that developing resilience was kind of a key part of your own career journey?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. I think, so I know there's a whole thing about, not to be called bossy and stubborn, but I think both of those really pay off. I am, I'm bossy and I don't care about it. So, and also I am stubborn, and I will not take no for an answer. There's just something in my head that doesn't hear it. And I just go, okay, you said no to that, but I'm sure I can find another way to do that. And then you're going to have to say yes anyway. So I do think there is a fair amount of resilience that goes with that. I was on a talk yesterday and I got asked about what do you do if someone says something not very nice to you? And I think that resilience is something that I've had to work on. So there is the resilience of not saying no, but the resilience of taking the blows and getting back up is something I have had to work on quite a lot, especially when you're insecure, and you're insecure not just about, it could be anything, the way you look or the way you present, or it could be the way, I sit in a room with Cambridge graduates who are straight up A's and I feel intimidated. And how do I deal with that? Right, so, and then when someone says something that puts you down in front of a group of people, how do you take that? And so that resilience is something I've had to work on. And I think one of the key parts for me has been having someone like Denise, or even my husband, who I can literally, when it happens, I finish whatever I'm doing, and then I pick up the phone to them and just go, did you hear what just happened? And then I am able to kind of just talk it through and just go, that's their issue, not my issue. But it takes time to get that layer, to be able to be resilient to that.
Fantastic. And I think a lot of our viewers and students are thinking about their future and the kind of world of work now, whilst they're at home and attempting to study as well. So a couple of questions here in terms of, do you have any kind of top tips or advice that you would give to young people on how they can get the job of their dreams?
I think knowing what you want to do is quite a big deal. And that can change over time. But I'm quite a big believer in vision boards and having a plan, not necessarily the detailed plan, but just having an idea of what you would like to be or what you would like in your life. And sometimes for me, it is a question of, I want to have more free time. I want to spend more time with my kids or whatever, or it could be, and this is obviously happening in periods of time, I want the business to be at a certain point. I want to get a certain job. I want to be on a certain platform. But having that vision of what it is you want is quite key, because it helps you focus on where you want to be. And so if you have a moment, there's a book that I read called Secrets, where it actually inspired me to create a vision board. And so I really look at it and think, what is it I want in my life for the next 2 to 5 years? I don't go much beyond that, because I think then you're not quite sure. And even in that, it changes. Things come off and things get put on. But just having a plan and a thought process of what you would like to be, or where you would like to be, I think is really important, and have that purpose and focus in doing that.
Fantastic. And then another very popular question here is, how can young people motivate themselves to study? Because it's kind of hard when they have their phones right in front of them.
Oh gosh, so that's quite hard, because my kids are the same, and so mine are pretty young and they're on TikTok all the time. It's hard, social media and phones and chatting with your friends, it's hard. And I have to say, we went through it too. My mum would tell you about the crazy phone bills she would have, because I would just be at home chatting to my friends and watching Neighbours or whatever else I was watching at the time. And so I think it is a question of just being disciplined, and it comes back to, if you have your purpose and your vision of where you want to be, if you just look at that and go, I'm not going to make it if I just sit on my phone chatting to my friends all day. Maybe I can do that for 1 hour of the day, and then the rest of the time I can do something else. And that's honestly, like, my kids are a lot younger than I think that the audience are. But even for them, at this time, you've also got to be kind to yourself. And so they are studying, they are going through, the classes they're meant to do and their homework, but I let them have more screen time than I would normally let them have. And I let them stay up later, and I let them hang out a bit more than I would normally. I would have them a bit more structured than they they are right now. Because I think right now it's important for us just to be nice to ourselves and to each other. And if you have a friend who needs help, then take time to do that, because you know who we are when we come out of this is quite a big deal. So I would say take it easy on yourselves right now, but overall have that focus and that purpose so that you know where you want to be and where you're going in the longer term.
Excellent. And just thinking about that future world of work, what are some of the kind of transferable skills that you think would help young people in the future?
Do you know, one thing I have to say about young people that I have seen more recently is they are so passionate and ready to get up and go, and see the injustice in the world and are finding ways of fixing that. So I was involved in a judging process recently for a university, and it was it was all about innovation to change and to have social impact. And it was just incredible to see how the next generation is really looking at business and social enterprise together. And I think that is going to be incredible, just seeing how you're able to get up and connect to millions of people pretty instantly through social media, through the global platforms that we have now. And you're able to research and you're able to really tap into the needs and be able to pull those needs together. I think it's fantastic. But I am really inspired by the next generation, by the generation who are on this platform today, who want to make a difference. And are not just thinking about, the money, but thinking about the money and the social aspect of it, which is really important. And I think one of the things coming out of COVID is how are we going to make this better? Because, and I've seen a lot of quotes about how the normal we had before wasn't normal, and it really wasn't. The fact that we are all able to work remotely is okay. But if you think about the number of organizations that would not allow that to happen, and the number of women that had left work because they weren't able to work remotely or flexibly, that it wasn't okay. And we are now in a world where, well, what do we want it to look like? What do we want it to look like? And seeing this generation addressing that is incredible.
Fantastic. And just reflecting on that, one question that we have here is, what laws would you change if you had the chance?
Oh gosh. Okay, so one law that I've always thought would be amazing is that every kid, girl and boy, have to stay in education in some form until they're 18, which in the UK and the US is one thing. In every other country in the world, it is quite, well, not every other country, because obviously we've got other developing countries that allow that, but in a lot of developing countries, that would make a massive difference. So just being able to ensure that every child is able to stay in school will have a massive impact, both in terms of just society generally, but in terms of women's rights, in terms of human rights. I think that would have quite an impact and would make us think about society in a different way.
Fantastic. And what have you been doing what have you been doing to keep yourself busy during quarantine?
Okay, so apart from the 3 kids and trying to keep them busy and keeping them fed and all the rest of it, one of the things that, so the projects that I thought I would be working on, having left, have kind of slowed down a little bit. So for example, free periods has kind of slowed down a little bit. I found an organisation locally in LA called Schools on Wheels. And I don't know if any of you get a chance to watch a movie called The Pursuit of Happiness, watch it. It's got Will Smith in it, but it's about a story of homelessness in Los Angeles. Actually, homelessness in the US, but this one's in Los Angeles, and it's really about a kid whose father is working but has no home, so they live in a shelter or in a car or in a bathroom. And that is quite big in California. So 1 in 20 children in California are homeless. And so if you manage that, imagine that in terms of lockdown, and they have no access to school, they have no laptop, and they have no internet, because these shelters and motels and cars don't have internet. So they have no access to anything, and they're stuck in a room because the lockdown here is quite they're not allowed to go out and do anything. So I've been literally pounding the phones with from the mayor's office to doing fundraising, to trying to call people at Google and every other tech company to try and get the 1,000-odd laptops that we need and internet access, which when I first started thought this is going to be not a big deal, considering I've got some contacts within all of those industries, but we have barely made a dent. So after we finish this, and once it wakes up in LA, that's what I'll be working on, trying to get some internet for these children, trying to get hotspots for about 1,600 children.
That's amazing, and so fantastic to be working on something so important during this difficult time as well, that will have such a large impact.
Yeah, and I know there's so one of my co-directors at Free Periods is working on a campaign in the UK to try and get internet and laptops to all children in the UK, and she's part of the legal case. So this is the difference between laws in the UK and the US. The UK have a legal challenge going on to try and get the government to provide that. In the US, that would be quite a feat to do. So, so we've done it through fundraising and through networking, but in the UK, I know it's a legal challenge at the moment.
Fantastic, and just time for one last question, which is, if you could have a superpower, what would it be and why? Get my kids to tidy up, I think would be people to listen. Superpower. I mean, honestly, I would love. I've always wanted to be super efficient and be able to go fast. And one of the things I've always wanted to do is be able to flick a book and be able to read it. So I'd literally just be able to flick any book and be able to know what it has in it. That would be awesome. That's a great superpower, actually. That's fantastic. Well, unfortunately, that is all we have time for today, but a huge thank you to everyone who has tuned in. For those of you who have been asked to complete the student activity sheet, the colour for today's talk is peach. We have also shared a feedback form in the Q&A thread, and it'd be fantastic if you could complete this. Janvi, thank you so much for joining us today and answering all of our questions. It really is appreciated. And hopefully we'll be able to do this again in the future. We hope everyone has a great day, and thank you for joining us. Brilliant. Thank you, guys. Everyone take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.